Mr.
Speaker, the Māori Party will be supporting this bill, the first reading, but at this stage that support is conditional on the sorts of information we're likely to hear as it comes up through Select Committee. We support the notion of reform of the justice system. We support it because, and not because I'm saying it, but because it's true, the statistics say so. In terms of justice as it applies to Māori on the street, lawyers in the House will know that when a Māori and a Pākehā are stopped on the street for essentially the same issue, the Māori, to nobody's great surprise, is more likely to be arrested. And when the Māori and the Pākehā end up going to court on the same kind of issue, to nobody's great surprise, the Māori is more likely to be convicted. And when the issue of sentencing comes up for Māori and the Pākehā who are up on essentially the same charge, to nobody's great surprise, it's the Māori who get sent to jail more often. And in terms of the length of the sentence, when the Māori and the Pākehā are being sentenced on essentially the same charge, to nobody's great surprise, the Māori get sentenced to a longer term in jail. So, Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party supports absolutely the need for reform of the justice system at every level. And although that's a big fat report, we don't see anything in it that's going to affect the statistics that I just mentioned earlier. I heard the Minister speak in his opening address and used the phrase, a well-known phrase, justice delayed is justice denied. And I note many of the clauses here to speed up the process. I'd also add, therefore, that from knowledge of the system, that justice hastened is not necessarily justice confirmed. And the fact that that there's an aim to speed up trials, to have trials without the accused. I remember speaking on that in the remote courts by remote participation bill. And I remember that the strength of opposition from Labour particularly, and the Greens and from the Māori Party, convinced the Minister of the need not to be so hasty in going to court, going to trial without the accused being in the courtroom. I think that's another issue that I see it's raising its head again in this piece of legislation, and we of course are hugely concerned with that as well, because I know from just understanding how the system works that in a jury trial it's far easier to convict somebody that you don't have to look in the eye. It's far easier to convict somebody just on what you hear from others. It's far easier to convict somebody when that person's not present to give their side of the story. And if trials are going to be allowed of people who are not in the court, and I note from a comment from Mr. Chevelle that the judge won't even have the right to determine whether or not that goes ahead. That'll be the way it happens simply because the legislation says so. Then neither the judge nor the defendant will even get a say as to whether they're going to participate in their own defence. And like Mr. Chevelle, I also worry that when we're talking about changing the nature of a judicial system that for all of its flaws has been in existence for such a long time, and we more than ever know, more than most know of its flaws, that there should be far more accountability for those changes than just the fact that the government and one of its coalition partners can pass a piece of legislation that's going to have such sweeping changes. and impact so many people in terms of the law as it will continue in the future. I also note that in the speeding up of the process to get people into court, the speeding up of the process to get people convicted, that I've yet to hear whether or not the Minister of Corrections is about to launch into another prison building program, because I note that when Labor began their prison building program, which was due to be completed next year, that the jails were already filled because of a rotten judicial system by the year 2009. They'd already filled them for 2012 before the prison building program had been completed. Now, if the process by which people are being sent to prison is going to be sped up even more, then we need to be spending more and more of this government's money and more and more of the taxpayers' money, building more and more jails for people that we absolutely know are going to be sent to jail. Unfortunately, most of them will be Māori. And so, while we support this going to select committee so we can hear what those concerns are going to be, I'm very clear in stipulating that our support is only to select committee to ensure that more and more people can have their say on this piece of legislation, and we will reserve the right to change our vote based on what we hear during those select committee hearings. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, huri rana, kia ora tātou katoa.